Last week we talked about why we're moving the chain plates to accommodate the new swept spreader rig. This week I'm going to try my best to explain, with the help of Evan, the naval architect, the design process for our new carbon fiber chain plates. My name is Matt. Follow along as I turn Duracell, the legendary ocean racing sailboat, into a comfortable cruising home. For those of you who don't know what a chain plate is, it is a very important piece of a sailboat that connects the standing rigging of a mast to the hull. Usually they are built out of stainless steel, but we are building ours out of carbon fiber. One of the most fun and surprising parts of this project has been the incredible support that we get from the community surrounding it. One of those people that has been helping so much is Evan, the naval architect. He has been helping us from the very beginning of this project, and one of the reasons I really like his help is because he is also a cruiser, and I feel like him and I have the same kind of philosophy when it comes to what we wanted about. He has been helping us from the very beginning, doing stuff like help design the backstay chain plates. He helped me evaluate the masts that we were looking at, making sure that they would work in the boat. And most recently, he's helped a lot with designing the shroud chain plates. We got to talk with Evan on Zoom a couple weeks ago for the first time. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, like what your sailing experience is?
I've been sailing since I'm about 10 or 12. My wife and we met at sailing instructor school. So we were at a school to become sailing instructors. And so we had this shared background and we decided to go off and see the world. So we bought a 30-foot sailboat and went and sailed down to Mexico in our late 20s, early 30s sort of time, and ended up on the East Coast of the United States. And there I got a job working for Bruce Farr's company, Farr Yacht Design. So I was involved with a lot of high-end kind of design work. So America's Cup boats and Volvo the World Racing boats and IMS racing boats. And so I got a lot of composite design experience there, which was great. My actual naval architecture background, I'm a mechanical engineer by training, but all the electives I did were naval architecture electives. We moved back to Vancouver. We bought another sailboat, this time a 40-foot catamaran. Did a huge refit. I always promised my wife I'm never going to build a boat, but I built about a half a boat. So, you go through 100 gallons of epoxy. I think that's about a half a boat's worth. So we did a major rebuild, refit, sailed around the world in that one.
I've built a few carbon fiber chain plates in the past for other people's boats, and I've always wanted to build some for my own boat. There are pretty big advantages and disadvantages to building them versus stainless steel chain plates.
Let's talk about sort of the default for most sailboats, and that's like stainless steel chain plates, right? Builders like stainless steel chain plates because they're cheap and they're fast. So they take a piece of flat bar stainless steel, they drill half a dozen holes and maybe one big hole at the top for the turnbuckle, and they bolt it on the boat with some caulking and that's it, right? The installation is quite quick and it's very cost effective. So that's why builders like stainless, and it's the default for most boats. If you look at the world of high-end custom race boats and all that, everyone does carbon chain plates. And even though the disadvantage is sort of cost and labor hours, right? They take longer to build. There's a bunch of advantages. They're lighter, right? A big heavy piece, especially on the size of Duracell. I saw you taking the old stainless chain plates, right? Those are tens of pounds as opposed to a few pounds for a carbon chain plate. So there's a weight advantage. The bigger advantage, I think, that a lot of people don't recognize is sort of durability and bulletproofness. When you design a carbon chain plate, because the stuff is so strong, you can put in enormously large safety factors, which, everyone likes to look at the chain plate and think it's never going anywhere. But with stainless ones, you see a lot of chain plates after 20 years, they get crevice corrosion. If it passes through the deck, prime spot, you'll see, pitting and stuff like that. And it also fatigues. And you don't see that happening a lot of the times. And you just have to look at how many people lose mast because a chain plate cracked either corrosion in the back of it or it was embedded in fiberglass, but there's so many ways it can fail. So I sort of think of it, carbon fiber is the better choice if you can do it, mostly because stainless is not that great for long-term durability. It looks nice and shiny when it's new, but 10 or 20 years down the road, probably closer to 20 years down the road, there are real issues with it failing.
This is the basic concept of how a carbon chain plate is built. A strap of carbon goes over a tube which is all laminated to the boat. This can be done many ways, in knees or bulkheads, or just installed into the hull itself. The tube and carbon then have slots cut into it to fit the toggle for the turnbuckle. Evan and I started the design work for these months ago. Initially, we were planning to just go from inside the boat to outside the boat with the strap, with the tube being up on top of the rail. The biggest issue with this is having to fare in a big lump of carbon that would be on the outside of the hull. So Evan suggested that we just laminate the entire thing to the inside of the hull. We went through a few more design iterations before ending up here with the final design. Now, before we could build and install the chain plates into the hull, we had to reinforce this area so that the load of the chain plate can be distributed down into the hull. So last week you saw that I removed the inside skin and the core, and we replaced that core with solid fiberglass. Evan will help us understand why that's necessary.
Okay, so one thing that I was thinking about when I was suggesting, hey, we should really do this as a single skin, is we don't really know how well that core is stuck to the skin. Okay, so that was sort of giving me, the sleepless nights sort of thing. And as an engineer, I've learned to pay attention when you just don't feel comfortable with things. So you could distribute the load by fanning out the fibers to some degree, but you can't do them like at big angles to get a big enough patch necessarily. So I was sort of thinking with the core, look, if we just take the core off and laminate on the inside skin, we're gonna know what we're dealing with, right? We will have a solid skin that's strong enough to take the loads. So we thought, yeah, the single skin is good. It grabs the two knees that are already there, ties them all together, and gives us a really strong, brand new layer to work on that hasn't seen decades of sailing too, right?
So how do we know exactly how strong these chain plates need to be?
I start with the breaking strength of the wire, right? Then I add a safety factor on top of that, a big safety factor on top of that, and that's the load I use to design how much carbon I need. But the thing that you realize is that when you're sailing normally, you're never exerting the breaking strength of the wire, right? It's down around 20% for a cruising boat, right? So you sort of got a 5-to-1 safety factor on the actual load that's applied day in, day out. You might see spikes above that, but then there's a safety factor multiplied on top of that. So the true safety factor on the everyday loads closer to about 20-to-1. So it's Excellent. A huge number in engineering. Normally we don't put 20-to-1 safety factors on things, but because the stuff's so strong, we can do it and sleep well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, be super confident in our rig. Just wanted to say thank you again very much for all the help that you've had.
You're welcome. You're doing a super cool project, and it's great to sort of share a little bit of knowledge and do a little bit of different kind of engineering that I do in my day job, right?
Yeah, right on.
So yeah, I enjoy it, and we'll keep doing it together, and we'll designing and building cool stuff.
Yeah, well, and I'm learning so much, obviously, and so I really appreciate it. So thank you again. We hope to talk to you soon. And,
yeah.
Have a good weekend.
All right, you too, Matt. Thanks. Bye-bye. You too, Matt. Thanks. Bye-bye.
It's time to cut the holes in the deck for the chain plates, so the chain plates will extend. That white tape indicates where the vertical chain plate will be, so it goes all the way down there, all the way up to above the deck, and so we're going to cut the hole in the deck to make room for both the vertical and diagonal chain plates. So here we go. we go. All right, so I'm making these wedges which go at the top of the chain plates. Very top of the chain plate is where the pin goes through. This is where the pin will connect to the toggle, the turnbuckle in the shroud. Two will be at the top. The pin goes through. The pin will obviously be longer than this one, but it'll go in like that. These will be laminated into the chain plate. This is a stainless steel tube. They will sit on top of a little wedge, and this wedge just helps taper the carbon together so that it's not such an abrupt corner on one side of the chain plate. You'll see as we start building them. But so I'm cutting these wedges right now. This is just Kusa board. I'm laminating a few half-inch pieces together, for a couple together for the smaller ones, and then we have bigger pieces for the vertical chain plates. So this tube will be glued to the top of this and laminated over with fiberglass first. Carbon, when it comes to electrolysis, is like metal, where if carbon is touching stainless, one will corrode. We have to insulate the stainless steel from the carbon, so that's why I'll not only glue this tube onto the wedge, but I'll also laminate fiberglass over it to make sure that the carbon and the stainless don't touch each other. But yeah, pretty good fit for the diagonal chain plates. Later tomorrow I'll get to building the vertical chain plate wedges. Somerset and I have been working tirelessly to get this first chain plate lamination done. It's been a whole bunch of futzing trying to get the wedges in the right place and everything, and just doing a lot of prep work. But we're finally ready to do the first laminations of the two vertical chain plates, so it's really exciting. Salty's been here with us all weekend, giving us a hand. This is 1/6 of the first chain plate right here. And so we're going to wet out all this carbon, wrap it onto the wedge, and vacuum bag it into its place. I'm pretty nervous, but it's pretty exciting to get this done.
So why are you nervous? What could go wrong?
Many things. It's important that we get a nice tight lamination onto the wedge and down the hole so that there's no wrinkles in the unidirectional fiberglass, which is pretty difficult to do. I'm nervous because these are incredibly important pieces of the boat, and we need to do a really good job building them so that we don't, break anything. Steal some.
long have you two known each other?
We went to college together. We were roommates in college in 2007.
Yeah.
And you've done many, many miles at sea together.
Mm-hmm.
Will you tell us a story from one of those times? A tale from the high seas.
Matt made a ceviche.
God, that wasn't the story I was gonna go to.
Do tell.
Got the whole crew deathly sick. Matt denies responsibility.
It wasn't my fault.
Uh-huh.
It was the Australians'
It
fault.
was the Aussies' fault, he says. It could have been. It could have been.
So the whole crew was sick?
Yeah, everyone except for the captain, luckily, because he didn't eat any ceviche.
I was just say the fastest I've ever gone on a sailboat was when you and I were on watch together. You were driving around Cape Mendocino or Cape Conception.
Yeah.
We had like 25 knots or something
Yeah. On the Baltic.
on the Baltic.
Yeah.
Was that the really, really stormy time?
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. It was fun though.
Yeah.
It was a fun ride.
It got less fun later. It broke the outhaul and couldn't properly reef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was crawling out on the boom trying to reef
Oh
the
yeah.
40 knots.
It's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready, honey?
Ready.
Cool.
Cool.
Okay, why don't you grab a couple, why don't you take your gloves off and then grab a couple peel plies for me? Okay. Show me the long one first. Yeah, that's good. So, I'm gonna go up and ease it down.
Okay. Go ahead and take up a little bit. Keep going. Right there's good. Okay, I'm gonna shimmy over.
Okay, I'm gonna get mine attached first.
Okay. Okay.
How did it go?
Went okay. I think there's a few things we gotta change about our process, but
Well, luckily you have a second chance on the other side, right?
yeah, exactly.
But it went well enough.
It went well enough, for sure. Well, we'll see tomorrow when I pull it off.
Can I get a high five?
High five.
High five.
Oh, okay. I met with you and Matt.
Oh, okay.
Later that night, after Salty had to go on a date, I decided to lay up the starboard side chain plate. I changed up my process this time in a couple ways. I stacked the laminates on a piece of plastic as I wet them out, and squeegeed out as much resin as I could while stacking them. Then I grabbed the whole stack and laid it over the wedge which was hung in place. This made it a lot easier to maneuver and to square up the laminates as I laid them over the wedge. Then I just peeled off the plastic to finish preparing the chain plate for the rest of the layers to go on. I could also easily get all the other materials onto the carbon before slipping the wedge off its hanger and taking it up on deck to slip it into position to vacuum bag it in place. We just turned the vacuum pump off. It's the next day after we've done the laminations of the first two chain plates, so I'm going to take this bag off and see how they look. Cool. This is 1/5 of the layers, or 1/6 of the layers that are going to be going onto this thing.
Seriously?
Yeah. So it'll be massive by the time this thing is done. It'll be huge. But look at how the whole reason that we did it like this is so that if I were to lay up all 36 layers onto at one and did it onto the hull at one time, it would have been impossible. It's like way too many layers. And so the reason that we pulled it off is so that now it has this shape, which is the shape of the hull, and I can take it to the shop and put the rest of it on just like this. And then we'll glue the whole thing onto the hull when it's all done. And see, this by itself would be enough to hold the mast up.
Then why are we adding so much reinforcement?
Because this would be exactly enough to do it. And so that's where we're adding 5 times this amount of uni, basically, to make it a 20-to-1 safety factor. You have the camera going? I'm very excited.
I can tell, honey.
We know this has been a long episode. We could have made it way longer. There's a lot to explain. I'm sure there's plenty of questions that you'll have. We'll try our best to answer a lot of those in upcoming episodes. In the meantime, we have a few more Patreons to thank this week. First, thanks to Lon and Susan, who have done 3 major boat refits and currently live on their trawler in San Francisco Bay. So thank you very much, Lon and Susan. Also, thank you to Matthias, who's from Sweden. He does a lot of kayaking and paddleboarding, getting out on the water. and he really loves supporting people with crazy projects. So thank you very much, Matthias. And lastly, thank you to Alex from New Caledonia. So thank you again very much to everybody who's helping support the channel.